Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Top 10 Charitable Trends Every Professional Advisor Should Know, with our special guest, Bryan Clontz, President and Founder of Charitable Solutions. I'm Cindy Sherrick, Director of Gift Planning here at Seattle Foundation, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Natalie Pond, who's our Gift Planning Advisor. Thank you so much for being here. We are deeply grateful for the collaboration with professional advisors who make client philanthropy possible. As many of you know, this event is part of an ongoing series we call Professional Advisor Continuing Education, or PACE. Our goal with PACE is to help all of us deepen our understanding of smart, strategic philanthropic planning. I'll start by giving us a quick overview of our time together. Today's 90-minute webinar is eligible for 1.5 CE credits for CFP, CLE, and CPA. Bryan will present for about an hour and 15 minutes, which will leave time at the end for your questions. Speaking of that, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to add your questions throughout the presentation. After Q&A, you'll be prompted to complete a short survey, and a reminder that completion of that survey is required to receive the CE credits. I'll now hand off to Natalie to share a few housekeeping items to get you the most out of today's session.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Happy to run through that housekeeping really quickly here. First of all, everyone is muted and cameras are off to limit noise and disruptions. We are recording today's presentation and we'll be sending out that recording along with the slides as soon as possible. At the end of the program, we will have time for Q&A, which will be moderated by both Cindy and myself. For any questions that came up during the program, as she already mentioned earlier, please use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen, or it might be at the top if you are using an iPhone or iPad to join us today. We'll get to as many questions as possible during our time. This event does have the option for a live transcript or closed captioning. If you'd like to turn this feature on or off or change the size of the closed captions, you can do so by clicking the live transcript button, which is also at the bottom of your Zoom window. When you sign off today, you will be prompted to take a quick survey about your experience. Please do take a few minutes to do this. It's incredibly helpful as we continue to improve our offerings. And as Cindy already mentioned, if you would like CE credits for attending today's event, completion of the survey is required. I'll now go ahead and pass it back to Cindy to introduce our speaker for today, Bryan Clontz.
Thank you, Natalie. I am honored today to introduce our speaker, Bryan Clontz. Bryan is the founder and president of Charitable Solutions, a national firm specializing in complex charitable gifts, especially non-cash assets like real estate, business interests, cryptocurrency, and life insurance. He's also the founder of multiple donor-advised funds that have collectively raised over $5 billion in non-cash gifts. He also created the National Gift Annuity Foundation, which is the largest national independent gift annuity platform. Bryan has spent decades in charitable planning, including leadership roles with United Way, Boys and Girls Club of America, and the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta. He's presented nationally for decades, written extensively on charitable gift strategies, and is a monthly Forbes contributor. Simply put, Bryan is one of the nation's leading experts in charitable planning with non-cash assets, and we are so pleased to have him here with us today. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Bryan Clontz.
Thank you, Cindy, very much. I know you're all muted, and I'm sure everybody's clapping and very excited. So I will just imagine that in my head. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And so I'm assuming all is good. Oh, I see virtual clapping. I did not expect that. That's very nice. Appreciate that. So what we're going to talk about today, and again, as was mentioned, you guys will get all of the slides. The top 10 charitable trends, at least I think, perhaps presumptively, that every charitable advisor and donor should know in 2026. And so these, I hope, as we go through, all 10 may not be resonating perhaps or relevant to you or your client base. And my goal is for at least 3 of them to say, never thought about it that way. This could be helpful to me and my practice, or obviously providing additional value to my clients. So with that, we're going to jump right on in, which I think you guys should hopefully be happy about. And we'll start with the first trend. And so trend number 1, and I want to really drive this point home a couple ways, and that is philanthropy is alive and well, kind of no matter what. What does that mean? When you think about, and I really want to, it's almost irrational. It's not almost, it is irrational how generous we are as a people and how wonderful is that. When you think about, if I were to say, Americans give more per capita than any other country in the world, other people in the world, you would all go, yeah, I kind of knew that. Maybe you did. But it tends to be number two, three, and four are UK, Australia, and Canada. They sort of jockey around a little bit for two, three, and four. We give double what they give. To drive the point home a little bit more, let's all imagine that we were building a forecast, a prediction model. All we want to do is prediction markets these days, right? But a prediction model. And let's say in 2016, I was doing this webinar. And I said, I want you as professional advisors, very wise, thoughtful, experienced, to guess, predict what overall charitable giving will be in the year 2020. Let's just say. And we're in 2016, and I said, I'm going to play with some variables. And the first variable I'm going to play with is we're going to change the tax law. And the tax law at that point in time, roughly two-thirds of people were itemizing their deductions and getting a benefit for charitable giving, as you know. And I'm going to change the tax law such that the standard deduction goes up so much that roughly 10% of people will now be itemizing and therefore getting a additional benefit for their charitable giving. I would suggest that most all of you would say, that's a disincentive to give. Giving's probably going to go down. And then let's say that we say, you know what? Rather than having roughly a $7 million estate exemption equivalent, let's just make it roughly $30 million. What will that do to charitable planning? Many of you might be thinking, oh, that's more on the estate side. When you know that you have an estate tax due, that pulls forward much, in particular larger, charitable gifts into lifetime gifts. So the point is that is not an incentive, generally speaking, for making additional gifts if you're removing the potential estate tax that now roughly, what, 0.1% of estates actually have to pay. So you might then, as a group, say, yeah, that probably is not going to be good either. And then let's just have more fun with the last variable and say, how about we add in, we don't know what it is yet, but we're going to add in a global pandemic just for fun. So let's throw all those three variables into our, in essence, a prediction or regression model to determine overall charitable giving in the United States. I would suggest, again, respectfully, most all, I would say intelligent people would say that's probably not going to be good. When you're thinking about COVID, not that long ago, as we all know, it's literally thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 2020. I don't know if I'm going to lose a family member. I don't know if I'm going to have my job. I don't know what's happening with my retirement plan. But you know what? Giving in 2020 increased more than any other giving year in the history of recorded data. You can't make that up. You can't. When we see need as a people, we give. Period. All those other variables that you would think logically, that's going to have a pretty big impact. People say, we see need, we're going to give. The next biggest giving increase year in the history of recorded data, number two, was 2021. You can't make that up either. How unbelievably irrational is that? And how unbelievably wonderful is that? And if people are giving right into the eye of the storm, I guess the brunt of the storm, how great is that? And the point here is philanthropy is alive and well, kind of no matter what. If we see need, we're going to respond to that need. I was at a bar, it was late, it was at a conference, whatever. But a person that I respect a lot said to me, she said, Bryan, the only competitor to philanthropy is conspicuous consumption. That's it. What do you do? For how much do I need? Pad that. How about kids? That's a whole nother slide. Pad that. The question is, to the extent that we have any excess or surplus, and we're blessed to have that, what do we do with that excess or surplus? Do we buy a bigger steak, a bigger car, a bigger vacation, a bigger house? In my view, they can do whatever they want to with it. But more and more people are saying, how about we move some of this more into the charitable bucket for charitable income, charitable impact during life and or through estate or legacy type gifts. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, some of this conspicuous consumption is coming back, to be sure, but more and more people are allocating a larger portion of their overall assets to charitable giving. Now, I have a little formula here below. You're going to see it here pretty quickly. And so, what do the people love to give to? What do all people love to give to? What are the big four sexies? The big four sexy things: kids, pets, schools, churches or religious institutions. Kids, pets, schools, and churches, religious institutions. So if you ever want to suggest to any of your clients or nonprofits that you work with a special event, and we do not need more special events in this world, but if we were going to do a new special event, what do you want to do? You want to get the little girl and you put her on the back of a mini pony and you put it in a church school, you're going to raise a lot of money. You hit all big four of the sexies. Everybody gets so excited. Oh, love the kids, love the pet. So that's how you raise money. And here it comes. Whoop. I got to go back to show you the money. There's the money at the bottom. So that's how you optimize for special events. You give people what they want. What do they want? Kids, pets, schools, and churches. So I did a study. This was a long time ago, but back when they were sort of debating whether or not to even keep the charitable income tax deduction. And they had me argue the other side, basically arguing against the deduction. And so I did this paper, et cetera. So I went back to 1956, and I was interested to see what was aggregated charitable giving relative to the gross domestic product, relative to GDP. And so I went back. Now, here I started in 1971 because I couldn't go back with 1956. But 1971 to me was particularly interesting. Why? Anybody know what this little red line here is from 1971 to 1981? That is the highest marginal income tax bracket. That's 70%, 70% highest marginal income tax bracket. Now, there are two schools of economic thought. One is that at 70% tax bracket, giving should go through the roof. Because if you are able to deduct that, if I give $1 and I can have tax savings at 70 cents on that dollar, that's only costing me a net 30 cents to make that $1 gift. That is literally a 3-to-1 government match. That's basically what it is. 3-to-1 government match. It costs me 30 cents. The other 70 cents is coming from somewhere else, 2.5 to 1. That is a hyper subsidy. The other school of economic thought said, no, no, no. People are going to feel very poor because all their discretionary income, that's what's left over, will be crowded out by the high taxes. They're not going to feel wealthy and therefore they're not going to give. And what I would suggest to you is if you heard both of those economists speak, you would say the same thing for both of them. You'd say, I don't know, that kind of makes sense, right? They both make sense, but they're completely different conclusions. So this isn't an experiment. This is not predicting or forecasting. This was over 10 years of activity. What was charitable giving? 1.7 to roughly 1.9% during that period. So then you'd say, well, that's interesting. Let's go forward. 1986 Tax Act, Reagan, right? 1986 to 1993, it was 28 to 30% was the highest marginal income tax bracket. You're seeing where I'm going. You can remember the two schools of economic thought. Then you wiggle, 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 1.7 to 1.9%. That's weird. That's the same as it was over here. Now, to be fair, GDP is a big number, and a tenth of a percent difference is fairly large nominally. But what I found so interesting was going back to 1956 and pulling it forward, it was almost consistently at that 1.9 to 2.2%, like every single year. High taxes, low taxes, super low exemption equivalent, super high exemption equivalent, wars, stagflation, inflation, deflation, usually 1.8, 1.9 to 2.1%, like every single year. And I think that's a wonderful story to tell because I have to tell myself this all the time. People don't care about taxes. If they see need, they're going to respond. We saw that in 2020, we saw that in 2021, and we saw that all the way back to 1956. We as tax advisors, the tax piece is the gravy, the frosting, the accelerant, but it's not the meat. They're still going to give. You may have a very different experience than I do, but I've heard lots of commentary on the more recent Tax Act, roughly reducing the impact of charitable deduction benefits by 5% or so, with the whole 37%, 35% maneuver. We've raised more in the first 5 months than we raised last year. So is that a conversation piece that you need to describe and disclose? Absolutely. Is that slowing down gifts? We haven't seen it at all. So the tax tail has much less whip than I would think generally, because getting back to trend number one, philanthropy is alive and well, kind of no matter what. So that's number one trend. Number two, demographic trends: best friend or worst enemy. You cannot fully appreciate how freaked out, and that's a technical term, freaked out very large blue chip historic charities are. Freaked out. Americans 85 and over represent the fastest growing age cohort. I'm in Florida. They're all driving. They constantly are driving. That is not a good thing. This is weird to actually say. So I'm actually an actuary by background academically. And I remember the first day of class, this is actually true. And the professor came in. He says, I'm just going to tell you right out of the gate something you're going to find out. And it's going to shock you, but I'd rather just tell you now. We're like, what's going on? And he said, there's a 100% mortality rate in this country. Like, that's interesting. Is you're going to find it out mathematically, but I'm just going to tell you now. Other countries, we don't know. We don't have all the data sets. But for this country, 100% mortality rate. Where this gets weird is we have about another 3 to 4 years left of the entire Depression era will be completely gone. Completely. That's how math works. That's weird. First named cohort in our history, obviously the greatest generation, been with us obviously our entire lives, will be completely gone. That's just kind of weird. Next bullet point. Half of the group's very upset with me now. I'll pull the nose up. Don't worry. Women are controlling. So my daughter loves that t-shirt where it says, let's eat, comma, grandma. And the back of the shirt says, let's eat grandma, no comma. And it says, punctuation saves lives. Here, hopefully I'm going to be saving my life, or will control an unprecedented level of wealth. What does that mean? You have to go through calculus 3, not a joke, to mathematically determine that women kill us off. 72% of the time, the surviving spouse is a female. 72% of the time. We all know why. I don't need to go into that now. The point is, women are controlling or will control an unprecedented level of wealth. Why does that matter? Men love to restrict. I don't know what it is in our DNA or biology. I have no idea. But we get very excited to put restrictions on restrictions, wrap it in a bucket of restrictions, put locks on it, and then restrict the locks. We get very excited about that. So for your community foundation, Seattle Foundation, I will bet you that many of the large estate gifts in particular that come from men tend to be designated funds and scholarship funds. Very, very typical. Those that come from women very often are unrestricted funds and field of interest funds. They give in a much more trusting, discretionary way, completely different in the aggregate than men. Big difference. So for those charities who are saying, I want have more unrestricted gifts, those are coming from women. And good news for the women, not for the guys, 72% of the time the final estate will be coming from a woman, which then again is more likely to be a discretionary gift. Then you go into the generations. I just talked about the Depression era. Then you've got boomers, Generation X and Y. And what is so important is we talk about Depression era. So I always pick on my grandfather. So he was core Depression era. So he went to Rotary and he knew people that were part of the United Way allocation committee. And he would give them discretionary gifts going, I know those people. I think they're going to do a good job. And they'd allocate those gifts. I like United Way because they've been around a long time. I like Red Cross, I like American Cancer Society. Those are all very known, comfortable, really a relationship developed over lifetimes for that era. Very trusting again for the older blue chip type traditional institutions. You then go down to my niece. My niece is odd on a couple of levels, but she was actually in a sorority. She went on and I need you to see that if you're not looking at me now, look at me now, a mission trip. So I put that in quotes. So what happens is they went down to Haiti. They realized, like when they got down there, that the a particular area was looking to try to build a well. So, like, oh, that'd be good. That can be part of our sort of mission project. They didn't know that going down there, which was kind of weird. But anyway, I'm digressing. The quotes means it was more of a vacation than a mission trip, but I'm digressing. So they went down and they're like, oh, we're going to build a well. They have no idea how to build a well. We'll start there. So what do? So they go onto Instagram, take like 9,000 pictures, more than they needed to. They put down a shopping list of all things that they needed to buy to dig this well. And then they linked it to a GoFundMe campaign. And then they pushed the whole thing out through Instagram and Facebook. What did happen? In about 48 hours, they raised roughly about $2,300-$2,400 from all the families and friends. They collected the money, they bought all this stuff, they dug the hole, they had another 9,000 Instagram pictures showing the well. I'm like, it's not a well. A well has water at the bottom of it. This was just a really deep hole. And they said, oh, we dug the well. It's like, "Yeah, that's a deep hole." So I'm digressing again. But they didn't have time to get the water coming out of it because they had to fly home. The point is this: if she, my niece, her giving pattern is totally different than my grandfather's giving pattern. They do not like large, old, traditional blue chip charities. They want super experiential, social network with friends, grassroots. If you are a large blue chip charity and you had a big, big lily pad, that was the entire Depression era, and that thing was working great. And literally every year that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You have a foot searching for the next lily pad at warp speed, and some are not finding the next lily pad. Another way to think about it is many of you are financial advisors. My grandfather also had a discretionary account. I think it was at Merrill Lynch or the predecessor to Merrill Lynch, a long time ago. So had a discretionary account. All of you, I think, know what that means, but some younger people may not. So discretionary account means I trust Joe. I give him my money. He trades whatever he wants. I meet with him once a quarter and he tells me how I did. That's a discretionary account. How is that different? My nephew, literally, and he's losing money every day, is in the back of an Uber on Robinhood trading crypto. Those are different. The difference between my grandfather and my nephew is exactly the same kind of difference that's occurring with charities, the larger blue chip charities connected to that Depression era, trying to now connect in some way with my nephew in the back of the Uber. So there is a incredible anxiety, incredible tension that's sort of going on generationally as well. So I just want to sort of point that out. Next, don't have to tell you this, competition is everywhere. Now, I've got on here currently 1.3 million charities. I need to update this. They're technically, I think now, somebody put it in Chat GPT, so the source of all things true. I think it's 1.5 million public charities. If you add in private foundations and all kind of other 501c organizations, I think it's at roughly 1.8 million. So the point is, I can't keep up. Why can't I keep up? Because you can see they're all in bold. 125 to 150 new charities created every single day of the year. These are new 1023s with exempt status provided to them, issued every single day of the year, including weekends and holidays. And many of you may remember the Great IRS Purge. And the Great IRS Purge was if a charity did not complete their 990 tax return over a 3-year period, they were deemed not to be a charity anymore and basically lost exempt status. And the hypothesis is there's no way there are this many charities that are out there. I'm sure that these are just file drawer charities that have long been shut down. They're no longer operational. We need to purge, clean up our publication 78, which is the cumulative list of all public charities. And it was roughly, I don't have the numbers right, but it's pretty close, roughly about 1.1, 1.2 million charities at that time. About 300,000 got pulled off the rolls. This was back in 2008, 9, 10 period. And then now if you add 125 to 150 every single day, that becomes 50 to 75,000 new charities coming online every single year. And then you multiply that times basically the last 14 years, and you can see we're actually above where we were by about 300,000 roughly in terms of public charities, what it was before the Great Purge, not after, before. That's how many charities we have. And what I implore all of you to do as advisors, and you won't do it, so I'm wasting my breath, But what I would implore you to do is if you have any client that says, I'd like to create a charity, the second they say that, I want you to duct tape them to a chair and force them to type into Google or ChatGPT or whatever they want the type of charity, the location, the population, and the impact that they want to have. And I will bet you a ton of money, that there are multiple charities out of the 1.5 million public charities, and in particular in the Seattle greater area, that are probably doing something super similar to what your client would otherwise be thinking about. Believe it or not, there is a ton of redundancy across the 1.5 million public charities. And what I hear every day is first, nobody ever types that into Google for 10 minutes before they create their own charity. That's the truth. And it would be somebody, I'm picking on somebody, but I'll just say it anyway. It's like, oh, my name's Mary, and I want to teach kids how to read. So I want to do a literacy program on Tuesdays after school. So I'd like to create my own charity to be able to do that. If she would have otherwise put into Google, hey, literacy program in my particular area after school. Oh, wait, Helen's got one that they do literacy training on Thursdays, not Tuesdays, but Thursdays. And then Mary, in my hypothetical, will say, you can't learn how to read on Thursdays. That's crazy. Plus, I've got a lot of stuff I do already on Thursdays. I want to create my new charity for Tuesdays. In life, I have a number of degrees. I was expelled from high school. You don't need to know that, but I got a number of degrees. And the first thing you learn about getting degrees is B's get degrees. B is good. Go with a B. Too many donors think that they have to have an A plus 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 solution. It's like simmer down. If you want to help an at-risk kid read, I'm guessing you probably have a Boys and Girls Club. That's kind of what they do. YMCA, lots of organizations can do those types of things. Well, they do it a little bit different than me. Little difference, fine. It's a B or B plus solution. Go with that. Because what's the issue? The issue is if you create your own charity, it doesn't end there, it starts there. And now you have to get a board. So now you have 125 to 150 new boards created every single day of the year. A new 990, a new operations system, accounting system, development, all of this operating infrastructure that is now sucking all the resources away from other charities who are actually having more impact. But most donors don't realize that. So I am on a soapbox. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I do not care what you do in Seattle. You can do whatever you want. But if it were me, I would say anytime I have a client ever that says, I'm considering setting up a new charity, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's look at the 1.5 million that exist and see if there might be a B level fit. There, I'll jump off my soapbox. I get riled up. The next thing that is very interesting, and I saw Bill Zook pop on too, so he might remember this. But back in the mid 90s, late 90s, a large national study back then, the NCPG, now the CGP, conducted basically said, like, where are charitable gifts actually occurring? How are they being developed? And it was very interesting that about 65% roughly of all charitable gifts were occurring at the charities, with the charities. And so we were like, that's interesting. And it was so weird that part of the organization at the time, and continues to be the case, is one of the key roles of that national organization is to encourage professional advisors like yourselves to raise the charitable question in the right time, in the right way, maximizing the impact and providing different options, obviously, to your clients. Well, then what happened was 20 years later, that actually worked. And now it's about 65% of all charitable gifts are created at the professional advisor level. Even when it was at the charity level, the charity might help create it. Maybe it's a charitable remainder trust. Maybe it's a gift through will. Maybe it's obviously a gift through a retirement plan designation, gift annuity, whatever it happens to be. They would certainly go back then and discuss that with their professional advisors to make sure it was appropriate. So in no way am I suggesting that wasn't occurring. But the original sort of draft planning, the outline of what a plan might be, was really happening in concert in discussion with the charity. And why is this different? This has totally changed. Now, professional advisors in many cases have disintermediated the charity. So the charity is not involved with any of these discussions. And so that can actually happen like, oh, you don't need to go talk to the charity. We can do this vehicle. We can do this piece. We can build this into your plan. You don't need to give them a call. This is creating I would say, a crisis. I'll say crisis. It's a crisis because many of these gifts are legacy gifts. Your Seattle Foundation, this is their business, our legacy, endowment, long term, obviously charitable capital. And for many of you, and I say this, I don't be flip about it, but many of you have no idea what the term basically or how long an endowment lasts. And many of you would say, oh, it's in perpetuity, because it's a fun word to say. Perpetuity, perpetuity, fun word to say. What does it actually mean? It means it will exist until no member of our species inhabits our planet, or maybe in Elon Musk's view, other planets. Our species no longer exists. That's how long an endowed gift lasts. So by not calling the charity, you're basically saying we're going to just throw a gift over the transom, maybe with a lot of restrictions, and we sure hope it's going to work out, but no big deal. You just have to manage that in that way that we designed without any input from you until the end of time as we know it. What could go wrong? The only thing worse than not getting a gift is getting a gift that you're actually not able to execute on and or directly impacts in a negative way the current mission, operations, or what the charity is trying to accomplish. And I'll be bad talking on behalf of charities, but if you add enough digits, they'll do whatever you want. What do you mean a $30 million gift? You want four porpoises in a porpoise pond? I don't know what the plural is of porpoises, by the way. Porpi. I live in Florida. I'm supposed to know that. The point is, you get enough digits on there, like how many porpoise do we need to put in the porpoise pond? Obviously, that's an exaggeration, not as much as you would think. So my point in this, my point, please, to hear this is so many advisors would say, well, the client wants to be confidential. We'd be so careful about, not sharing it with charities. You don't have to share anything with charities. Give them a call and say, hey, I'm working with a client. They're talking about building a porpoise pond. You guys want to build a porpoise pond? God, no, we don't want to build a porpoise pond. Okay, what would you do? Well, we could have a petting zoo. What would that be a petting zoo? Well, that actually would fit here and here and there and help the kids, be able to care for the pets and learn different skills. That might work. Okay, let me talk to my client, see if that's reasonable. Give them 10 minutes. Talk with the charities for 10 minutes before they have to administer a fund until the end of time as we know it. So I've been on my soapbox twice with 2 bullet points. Third, development plans exclusively focusing on the high net worth. So, as basically all charitable giving and sort of the whole sector tends to lag the financial sector by about 10 or 15 years. So, as the financial sector has gone up market, up market, up market, really after 2008, 9, and 10, now the charitable industry is going up market, up market, up market. So more and more when I do these types of talks, I'll hear from advisors and they will say something along the lines of, it feels like my big clients are getting hit up a lot more than they ever were before. I'm like, they are. If you want to have fun, you go into a capital campaign feasibility study with all of these research analytics. They know more about you than you know about you. It's spooky. This is a literal quote from a Big Ten University major gift officer. Literal quote. She says, I am not authorized to go visit any donor, unless they have the capacity to give at least $500,000. It is not cost efficient. There is not the appropriate ROI for me to go out and talk with anybody that otherwise would give less than that because we have identified through all these analytics, and I think she said, I can't remember the exact number, but she said we had something like 2,000 of our alumni we believe have the capacity to give it that level. So the internal management team has said, once you go call on those 2,000, then yes, you can talk with somebody that is less than that level. That has totally changed in the last 20, 25 years. It's all up market. You can see here, it used to always be the 80-10 rule. 80% of these giant campaigns, 80-10, 80-20, it would come from 20% of the donors. So the old 80-20 Pareto principle. So 80% of the campaign from 20% of the donors. Then it went to 90% of the campaign coming from 10% of the donors. And you can see here, this was a 2019 campaign. It's like 2.1 billion, large university. And they said, we just finished up the analytics. And yeah, it was actually 2 billion. Yeah. But 90% of that campaign came from 4% of their donors. And this is where it gets weird. They were really proud of it because that's more efficient. And then somebody, I will never forget this because it's the first time I've ever heard somebody just give a flat out honest answer. but the university president was there. And somebody asked the question that perhaps you're thinking, like, well, I guess that's efficient, but what about the 96% of donors that you never engaged with at all? And he literally said, this is a quote. He said, I've thought about that. And what I'm going to do is let the next president worry about the next campaign. That's honest. I'm like, I get it. And so who knows what's going to happen? So we have all this competition of charities, 50 to 75,000 new ones come on every line every single year. We have this, I won't say competition, but kind of, with professional advisors creating and disintermediating those charities from many of these types of charitable gifts, in particular, the endowment or legacy gifts. They're not calling charities anymore to involve them as part of that planning process through this sort of confidentiality thing, which I think is kind of a bit of a joke, but I'm digressing. And then of those groups now, the charities that are existing that are going after the larger gifts are going after obviously the ultra high net worth type donors to the extent that they have them within their constituency, because everything after 2008, 9, 10 Great Recession became basically a massive ROI play. So all the analytics that you would see in any kind of almost startup enterprise, maybe not that much, but closer than you might think, are also the same types of analytics now that are being used in particular for capital campaigns where they're bringing in all these different consultants. So competition is everywhere. Number four, simplifying basically the language and asking the right question at the right time. So many of you, I hope, know Dr. Russell James. He's kind of the Michael Jordan in our space. Tons and tons of research. This is one slide of, good Lord, he probably had 130 slides on this one particular research study, but I found it very powerful. So he took 1,246 people and had two different two different focus groups. And he asked the first focus group, how many of you would like to make a gift to charity in my will? And you can see there 23, I'll use my pointer and everything, 23% of those people said, oh, they'd be interested in doing that now. It's a focus group. They're not doing that, but that's how they answered it. He said, that's interesting. So then he asked another group of 1,246 people, how many of you would like to make a bequest gift to charity? 12% of people said they'd be interested in doing that now. Now, I'm an amateur mind reader, and I know what everybody in this webinar is thinking right now. You're thinking, that's the same thing. Bequest and gift to charity through your will is the same thing. It is the same thing, but not to normal humans. It's the same thing to you. To normal humans, bequest, is this King Arthur time? Do I have knights and vassals and peasants on my lands? And there isn't a person on this entire webinar that can spell the word bequeath. Nobody can spell that word. You have to do like Grammarly and spell check. It's got 14 vowels in it. Nobody can spell bequeath. Bequesting and bequeathing and knights and 4th century, and that sounds complicated, and I don't have vast estates. Gift to charity through my will. Oh yeah, I know what that means. I can do that. One word change that means the same thing has half as many people interested in doing that thing. That's crazy. That's crazy. So however simplified you've made your language, make it simpler. And I'm not talking about just for charitable stuff. I'm talking about for all planning. All planning. I would never think the bequest, like, are you kidding me? It's the same thing. We call that the B word. Do not say bequest. This is not a joke. You say bequest, half as many people interested in doing that thing. Don't say that word. That's kryptonite for plan gifts. Kryptonite. Don't ever say the word bequest. Gift through will or gift through beneficiary designation. Oh, I know what that is. That's simple. I can do that. Gets crazier. Then there was a study done, not Dr. James, but I've got the site down here. It's 2013. And so this is not a focus group. Not a focus group. These are people actually doing their wills. In the UK, you call some kind of phone number. I don't know. They ask you all the stuff for the fact finder. You pay them somehow. I don't know. And then they send you your will. It's kind of like legal Zoom on the phone. And so they said, we're going to run an experiment. So the first 1,000, there's not 10, 1,000 people who called in, and they said, part of the fact finder, they never raised the charitable question at all as part of the entire fact finder. Never raised as part of the questionnaire. 5%, which is shocking to me, it's that high. 5% said, hey, you never referenced charity. We'd like to include charity in our will. And they said, sure. Who do you want to give to? How much? Next group, the Dr. James study came out a year after, published a year after this study, but he was getting the preliminary findings of don't say bequest. So he called them and they're like, calm down. Okay, we won't say bequest. And they said, what should we say? Say will. And they said, okay, calm down. So what would you like to leave? Would you like to leave any money to charity in your will? They asked that one question. 10% of them said yes and did it. In our brains, there's a reptilian part. This is all about behavioral finance and behavioral economics. And there's a reptilian part of our brain that we want to be part of a herd. If we're part of a herd, we think we're going to be safe because evidently we're very focused on not being eaten. Nobody seems to want to be eaten by something. We get very nervous about that. So we want to be part of a herd, warm, cozy, safe herd. So how can you create a herd? It's called social norming. And how do they do it? In the UK, they don't even call these people clients. They call them customers. They said, many of our customers like to leave money to charity in their will. There's your herd. Many people are already doing this. They're not going to get eaten. If you want to get eaten, probably would not be a good idea to do this. But if you don't want to get eaten, come on over. Super warm and safe and cozy in the herd. Are there any causes you're passionate about? That is the question. Now, there are two things I don't like about this. First, I would say many of my clients like to leave money to charity in their will. I'd put a comma here to make it a run on sentence to say asking one sentence differently. But then I would say, tell me the causes that you're passionate about. But they asked it in this way. Fine. What happened? You can see the bar chart. It's 15% of the people included charity in their will. It gets so much crazier. They had all the data. So they went back and looked at the average amount in pounds left in this group. Same thing for this group. And it was weird. It was like 50 pounds difference between the two. Super, super close. This group had double the average gift left through will. So in math terms, this is called a 6x. By not asking the question at all versus asking exactly the academically tested question in the right way at the right time, 3 times more people did that thing at twice the dollar amount, meaning 6 times more going to charity by asking this question. That's it. One of the best lines I ever heard in my entire life was in Salina, Kansas. You will never hear another human say that exact sentence as long as you live. That's the one time I guarantee you're ever going to hear that in your entire lifetime. And the attorney stood up and he was talking with a group of legacy donors for their community foundation. And he said, you know what my job is as an attorney? It's to build up your trust enough so that you'll invite me into your garden. And when I'm in your garden, I need your help picking out your favorite annuals. The second I know what your favorite annuals are, I turn those into perennials. That's what I do. I said, that is the best line I've ever heard in my entire life. So when you're thinking about working with clients and you're thinking about the questionnaire and that process, and you're saying perhaps, as a suggestion, many of our clients like to leave money to charity in their will, tell me about the causes that you're passionate about. You're searching for their annuals. And once you figure out what their annuals are, then you can turn those into perennials through the estate plan, hopefully in concert with your Seattle Foundation as an example. So I hope this is helpful, sort of going back to this trend, simplifying the language, asking the right question at the right time. The next one is the giving pledge. So we've heard a lot about this recently. So all of you, I hope, know. So if you're giving more than half or more, it was basically started in Seattle, pretty much. Obviously, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And what's so interesting is when you think about the baby boomers are transitioning, so often people are like, oh, here's how many baby boomers are retiring every day. I always say, what are they retiring from? They're retiring from their businesses. They're retiring from their real estate portfolios. They're retiring from their careers. And as they're thinking about this, they're focusing a lot more on both of the asset transfers, but also the legacy and value transfers. And so somebody can look this up, but I think every single study for high net worth, every single high net worth study, I think in the last 15 years on boomers, the inheritance goals for kids has gone down every single year. How how can you let me back up. This is to me it's interesting. What was the estate plan for everyone in the Depression era? Everyone. It is basically, I don't know why we're having so many questions. It's everything I have to kids. That was the estate plan. What I have, get to the kids. You then go to the baby boomers and like, whoa, 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 not so fast. Again, you can see this. How much is enough? You leave your kids too much, you're going to ruin the kids. Da 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 da. How much is enough? Again, more for the high net worth sort of plus families. And so the point is the last time that I saw a U.S. Trust study, I think it was eighth. Inheritance goals for kids for high net worth was eighth. That is not what it would be for Depression era at all. Totally different mindset. And obviously, you have sort of the Bill Gates. Buffett, of course, has a great quote. He's got 9 million great quotes. But of course, I think many of you have heard this. He said, you should give your kids so much that they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. And you say that to a millionaire next door, that will resonate. T. Boone Pickens, who he lost, I think 3 or 4 years ago, passed away. He said, I'm never going to put my child in the situation where he or she doesn't have the pleasure of bringing home a paycheck. That is completely different thinking than the Depression era. And what I also found interesting is I've done this once in my life, but I was out at Beverly Hills and I've been there once. And there was a speech and it was a child, listen to this. It was a child psychologist in Beverly Hills for high net worth families. And I came back and I told my wife, I said, if I'm ever convicted of murder, that actually, I would rather go to jail than have that as my sentence. Can you imagine every day you show up at 8 o'clock and your entire day is filled with dysfunctional Beverly Hills high net worth family issues? Just send me to jail. Put me in, I'd rather have solitary than that. But she did it for like 30 years, wrote a book. And so she gave a speech. And at the end of the speech, she said, are there any questions? I said, I've got a question. I said, there isn't one journal, one any kind of articles in terms of collection of articles for tax planning, for estate planning, for financial planning that doesn't have some article in there basically saying explicitly or implicitly, if you leave too much money to kids, you're going to ruin the kids. I said, what has been your experience? That was my question. I will never forget her answer. She said, I mean, she was like super direct. She said, you tell me how an 8 to a 10-year old, 8 to 10, 8 to 10-year old who gets an allowance of $10 on a Friday, and you give me a little forensic accounting of that by Sunday. And she said, I will tell you precisely how that 8-year old will spend her inheritance at 55. She said, I will not be off. I'm like, whoa, that's a little scary. So think about it, like let's say you give $10 to your daughter, she goes up to, suckers the mom to go up to the grocery store to get sugar and lemons, and she does a lemonade stand and she takes her $10 and it's $42 on Sunday. Or it goes to the son, it's always the son, it goes to the brother. The brother gets $10. He already has 14 IOUs to the sister before he got the $10. She said what is amazing to her is when that brother in my example inherits $2.1 million at age 53 and it's all gone in 24 months, that the family is shocked, shocked that that happened. She goes, really? You didn't see any of that coming the first 50 years. And she said, and these are the two quotes I think were so powerful. She says, money personifies financial character. If you blow $10, you're going to blow $10 million. The other thing that was shocking to me was another quote she said. She goes, that financial character is baked between 8 and 10. Baked. She said, 18 years old, trying to do, money habits and responsibility. She goes, it is BBs off a battleship. Way too late. Also, very interesting, she said the only thing that can change it after 8 to 10 is some kind of financial PTSD. It's a bankruptcy of the family, it's a foreclosure, it's the entire Great Depression, which obviously gave PTSD to the entire generation. It has to be something that is so big that it basically just reboots the financial part of the brain and then reprograms it. And she goes, that is about the only thing that can change that dynamic after 8 to 10. So I hope I've scared all of you because at that time I had an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm driving back to the LAX airport, which I hate. I'm calling my wife and it's super late at night on the East Coast. I'm going, oh my God, get out the piggy banks, give, invest, spend, so I'm freaking out. So the point is that the giving pledge is really what the millionaires next door, more on the baby boomer side. And they're really thinking about, again, what is that right amount? How do we transfer not just the valuables, but the values? You've heard all of these things. Now, a couple things here, and this is kind of a quiz. It'll be fun for me to do, but you will not be able to participate too much. But I actually taught at Georgia State University for a little bit just as an adjunct. And when I was there, one of the marketing professors was Tom Stanley, who wrote The Millionaire Next Door, co-authored The Millionaire Next Door. Great book, obviously. So can anybody remember the number one car driven by a millionaire? Number one car? And it's actually a Ford F-150. So a Ford F-150, number one car driven by a millionaire. Whenever I bring this up, so many people will say, "Oh my gosh, I got to go up to the dealership this weekend and buy an F-150." I'm like, it doesn't work that way. So in statistics, you learn sort of basically correlation does not mean causation. So you can't buy the truck to become the millionaire. But anyway, it's an F-150, number one car driven by millionaires. The other thing, which is I think interesting, is if you look at some of the data when there are a lot of estate tax returns, 706 returns done, and you look at the actual profession of the decedent. So it would have occupation of decedent. And if they didn't put retired, they'd put in their profession. Not by percentage, not percentage, but just by overall number, so nominally, what was pretty consistently one of the largest, and not the largest, professions that file an estate tax return. And what a lot of people say is, oh, it's a professional or it's small business or farmer, all those types of things. Like, no, it's teacher. Teacher is one of the top ones very consistently. And they'd be like, why? Because teachers traditionally, generally here, female, very good benefits, not a very incented to drive very high-end cars onto many campuses, learn to live well beneath their means. And because they're female, if they're married then to the professional, to the small business, to the real estate owner, what have we talked about the second slide? She kills him off 72% of the time. He does the I love you will, and now she has an estate tax issue. Also, interestingly, the average depends on the study, but roughly, the average gift left to charity in the will, I did not say bequest, left to charity in the will, I'm working on it myself, is between about $50,000 and $65,000, sort of in that range based on the study. Anybody know the average amount left, I'm sorry, given during life to that same charity each year by that same donor? So a $50,000 to $65,000 estate gift, what was the annual average lifetime gift to that same charity? It's about $110. That's a gift from income. I could live forever. I could get sick. My kids could get sick versus a gift of assets. I didn't live forever. That's why there's an estate gift. And now then those assets are released to charity. So my point is, if any of you are in Seattle at any point or the greater area, and you have a donor who's been giving to your favorite charity $110 a year, let's make up, and it's a teacher, and she's all sidled up in an F-150, she has to stop somewhere. She has to stop at a stoplight. She has to stop for gas. She has to stop sign. What you do is you pull up behind her. You jump out of your car. Maybe you're in the Waymo. You hop out of the Waymo. You run up and you grab a hold of her bumper. And it's going to be a very thick bumper. Those F-150s have big bumpers. You hold on that bumper hard and she's going to drive. And you hold on tight. And you drive. And when you get to her house, if you see the recycle bin and there are a ton of kitty litter bags, boom. Teacher giving you $110 a year in an F-150, lots of cats. There's a direct regression analysis, not true, but probably it is, for a lot more money. So I've made you money in two ways here. You've got the Little Girl Mini Pony Church School, and now you have the teacher F-150 giving $110 a year, probably a lot of cats, giving you a lot of money through the estate gifts. So there you go. You're welcome. All right, number 6, sort of what's happening here around sort of life insurance and also on the QCD side. So first is around life insurance. So this is, to me, very interesting what's happening to a great extent in this space. So how much life insurance has been purchased in the last 20 or 30 years for estate tax liquidity? I have no idea, but I do know it is a lot of life insurance held in irrevocable life insurance trusts, obviously income and estate tax free. that was originally used based on the original purchase as the purpose being estate tax liquidity, or at least liquidity to the estate. Well, now, if there's no estate tax for 99.9% of the population and you have all this life insurance out there, like what's happening with the life insurance? A lot is happening, but yet nothing is happening. That sounds weird. I know. So, are people surrendering those policies? No, because they think estate tax is going to come back and they've been paying for it for 10, 15, 20 years. Are they giving those to charity? No, they're not giving them to charity. What are they doing? What they're doing is they're keeping the eyelet in place, and now they're then rethinking the assets that are within the estate that are the bad assets. You know what I mean? All the income in respect of a decedent IRD retirement plan type assets, and they're pointing those to the charities directly. Obviously, as a beneficiary designation. We'll pick a random charity like the Seattle Foundation. So, the Seattle Foundation, now all of a sudden, you are going to have this life insurance paying to the estate or paying through the irrevocable life insurance trust to be used to pay estate taxes. Well, now you don't have estate taxes. What do the family members want? They want cash. Do you want cash? Do you have to pay a bunch of tax on? No, they do not want cash that you have to pay a bunch of tax on. So why not redirect, repurpose all the bad assets to charity? And now, in essence, you're replacing all of those assets using the tax-free life insurance that was going to be used originally for the taxes that no longer have that need. That's what we're seeing in a big, big, big way. And the great part about that planning, in my view, is it's all revocable, all of it. Taxes all come back in a bad way, and by next Monday, just change everything. Change the beneficiary of the retirement plans. Change the benefit. You can change everything in about a day. So you basically just reverse all of the things if there are some kind of changes. Next is around the QCD. There are three things in life that you want a fake ID for. You're 19, you know the rest of that story. You've embezzled a bunch of money, you've murdered somebody, you're trying to get over a border, or you're 69 years old and you really want to be 70 and a half to be able to do a qualified charitable distribution. It's that good. Donors love that. There is not a meaner, more nasty conversation than you can ever have, tell me I'm wrong, than the first time you talk with a client about the need that they are required to do a RMD. You're required to take it out. You're required to pay tax on it. Who says I've got to? I mean, they get like mad, like pit bull mad. Like, whoa, calm down. Oh, I know what we can do. We can give that to charity instead. Obviously, that meets your RMD requirement as part of the QCD. Donors love this QCD. What I'm finding, however, and I'd love, Bill or somebody else to opine on this, but I'm hearing not every week, but I would say probably every 2 to 3 weeks, it's the same story. I'll talk with some charity and they'll say it happened again. It's like, what happened again? Well, we were listed in the will, we got cash through the will, and then we hear that the kids got the IRA. You're going, what? This has been around for 30 years. And what I would implore you to do as financial advisors, and it's a pain, I know it's a pain, but if you ask your clients, hey, did you change that beneficiary designation? What do they say? Yes, I changed that beneficiary designation. And then they pass away, and then you realize they didn't change that beneficiary designation. The kids get the IRA or 401k or 403b money, and then the charity is getting the gift through will. Blah. So the point here is just make sure that the beneficiary designation has been changed to make sure that this bad thing doesn't keep happening. That's the bottom line. Number 7, donor advised funds. Whew. They were accelerating like crazy before. Now this is like crazy acceleration. So first, obviously, the impact of the standard deduction, we know. So that's creating more bunching. You have more incentive to kind of bunch based on sort of the new tax law as well. So now there was an incentive before, now there's a double incentive. And so being able to use these donor advised funds and other vehicles, your Seattle Foundation has a whole lot more than just donor advised funds. They've got designated funds, they've got scholarship funds, unrestricted funds, field of interest funds, agency endowment fund. They have all these other types of funds beyond donor advised, but more and more for people who are looking for that flexibility and around this bunching tend to use donor advised funds. So a couple facts here, which I think are interesting. Number one, almost 1,500 donor advised fund sponsors. Your Seattle Foundation is one of them. You can see here, which is crazy to me, 470,000 individual donor advised funds in 2017. We are not 10 years later. This is the 2025 report based on 2024 data. So it went from 469,000 to 3.5 million. And these have been around since the 30s. So this isn't like a new kind of vehicle. You're talking about in the last, in that point, 7 years, it's gone up, what is that, 8 times? Whew, they are just growing like crazy. 326 billion in assets. I find this interesting. That's roughly a third, roughly, of what are in private foundation assets. But these are growing at warp speed, where private foundations are either static or coming down slightly. You can see 90 billion in new contributions, 65 billion in grants. This is a 25.1% payout rate. There are about four different ways of determining payout rate. I think the most conservative way, it's around 19%, 19 or 20. But this would be the same way that a private foundation determines its payout rate based on the initial assets at the start of the year. You can then see average fund size, 91,000, so not huge. I'm aware of, I think, 12 or 13 individual donor advised funds that are over a billion each. So back when I started in this business in the mid 90s, it was always, oh, it's more than 5 million or definitely more than 10 million. You really want to look at a private foundation. That has completely changed from a trend standpoint. They're really thinking about, why would I do a private foundation, and not a donor advised fund? And usually that's around compensation for people. 77% of private foundations are created. One of the main reasons why is they want to compensate someone else, maybe who can't get a job doing things. I'm being bad. And then they realize what reasonable compensation is, and only 23% of private foundations actually have paid staff, because they realize it's a huge pain and they're not going to be able to pay them that much. The other thing that I find interesting, and I'll just be on a soapbox for 2 seconds, is that there's this push by some people around doing a mandated payout rate. That would be the dumbest thing, in my view, that Congress could ever do, and they've done a lot of dumb things. So, in the first minute of the first class of the first day of behavioral finance, you learn two things. If you tell a human they must do something, they will spend all waking hours and energy not doing that thing. And if you say they are not allowed to do something, they will spend all their waking hours and energy going to do that thing. It's called basically mental flooring. And so the point is that for private foundations, if I said, what does a private foundation have to grant out? Every single one of you would say 5%. It's not 5%, because there are CPAs on this call who will say, oh, you're able to back out administrative expenses, including compensation, and you don't have to give up 5% this year, Joe. I was able to do the calculations. You only have to give out 4.72312%. Aren't you happy? So all they do is they obsess on not giving out the full 5%. That's not a joke. If you tell donor advised funds, well, you can give out whatever you want. Okay, I don't even know what that means. Maybe 20, 25% in the aggregate. In the aggregate, some give out a whole lot more, some give it a lot less. The point is, if you said you have to give out 5%, then that becomes the floor, and then that's what people are going to give. That's just how this works. A super quick example, which is weird, is Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, did a huge campaign in the early 80s to try to take out foul language from basically massive cussing out of music. And so, any of you who are around then, it was kind of comical how the whole thing worked. She worked hard on this. Now, there weren't a whole lot of people on the other side going, no, we want more F bombs. She didn't have a lot of competition there, or obstacles. And then so she got it passed, and they did a big parade, blah, blah, blah. So what happened? Then they would put the parental warning sticker on, back then, cassettes and CDs and albums at the local, we had these things called malls. And who ran the record store at the mall? It was always your best friend's older brother, always. And he was 17. And they would do, this is not a joke, they would put it behind lock and key for those, for that music that had that parental warning sticker behind the counter. And who had this magical key? Your 17-year-old best friend's brother. And then, so the point was, this is not a joke. Look it up. Tipper Gore's intention was to take this out of the music. What do you think happened to all of the sales for those music, for the CDs and cassettes and so on that had the sticker? It went up 37%. Sales went up. That's called the economics of unintended consequences. So much so, not a joke. Look at it, ChatGPT, not a joke. They would have people who never cussed ever, 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 ever in their music. And when this all happened, they were getting all these numbers out going, oh my gosh, the sales are going through the roof if it has a parental warning sticker on there. Hey, we need 4 F-bombs. I've never cussed before. I love you. I don't care. Just jam them in there. Well, I don't know where they're going to fit. Jam them in there. We got to have the sticker. If we don't have the sticker, our sales are going to be down 37%. Not a joke. If you want to do a movie and maximize the revenue, G, bad. X, bad. Back it up a little bit. R, good. Profit maximization, R. That's what you do. The point here is, this is weird, but the point is that the second you came back and you said, we're going to mandate a 5% payout minimum for donor advised funds, to me, that would be exactly the same thing as sticking the parental warning sticker. That 25% payout rate is going to go down, I'll bet you money, to 5 to 7%, because that's what it is for private foundations. That's what would happen. I'm just saying it now. Number 8, don't touch cash, donate non-cash. I think I did this maybe webinar last time with you guys, I'm not sure. The non-cash market is 4 to 6 times that of the entire stock market. Non-cash defined as not cash or publicly traded securities, real estate, private stock, etc. They're accelerating in a huge way, because again, the baby boomers are retiring and they're divesting. So all the merger acquisition activity, we're doing about maybe it's 20% of our gifts with RIAs themselves. There's typically LLCs electing to be taxed as S as an RIA, and they're selling to the junior members or they're selling to another firm. So you're seeing all of this sort of activity and transactions, and a lot of these are ending up in charitable funds, and in particular with community foundations like yours as well. The big thing here is cash bad, 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 bad. Everything else good. What's everything else? Long-term capital gain property that's appreciated the most. That's the key. Lowest cost basis, most highly appreciated asset. I love this chart. I'll go through it quickly. This is a Federal Reserve data chart, nasty data set. Visual capitalist firm put this visualization together. And this is net worth tier, household net worth, $10,000 household net worth, $100,000 household net worth, $1 billion. And then they broke down the average assets, basically the average balance sheet for each one of the tiers. Very powerful. First thing is green. Green's always good. Green, bad. Bad, bad, bad. Green, cash. Cash equivalents. Dinky, dinkier, dinkier, gets dinkier as you go up. That's interesting. Where do 92 to 94% of the gifts in this country come from? Cash. Bad, 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 bad. Small gifts, good. Cash, fine, whatever. Big gifts, not good. What do you want? You want the public traded stock that has the lowest basis, or the private stock that has the lowest basis, or the real estate that has the lowest basis? What's the cost basis for every single private stock in all of the greater Seattle area per share? Not a joke. It's 56 cents. 56 cents a share. It's always less than 2%. Always. Always. What is it for real estate? Real estate, you're depreciating it every single year. What does it mean to depreciate it? You're lowering your adjusted tax basis until some point in the future. It is what? Zero. Zero basis, long-term capital gain asset, ding, ding, ding. That's the holy grail. Give that. When you look at this, then you think of this dark blue. Where's my pointer? Here it is. Dark blue, business interests. Oh, that must be like publicly traded stock. Nope, that's light blue, stocks. Light blue are the stocks, pretty small. Now the light green are mutual funds, so those are kind of mushed together. This is fixed income investments, managed assets, but that's still not that big of a publicly traded sort of market asset allocation overall. The darkest blue are private business interests, C Corp, LLC, S Corp, etc. Then you have the next darkest blue, real estate. That's commercial and investment real estate. That's pretty chunky too. That's not their primary residence. This is their primary residence. At about 10 million, interestingly, $10 million net worth tier, the commercial or investment real estate on average is a little bit more than their house. So I think that's kind of interesting. So the point is, the most charitably inclined people, huge nugget, the most charitably inclined people in this entire country are private business owners, private business wealth, and real estate wealth. Always, always, always. In Jacksonville, in Salina, Kansas, in Seattle, always. And then what do they end up giving to charity, to their fund at the Seattle Foundation? Many of them give cash because they don't realize they can give private stock and real estate. So that's non-cash stuff. Trend number 9, professional advisors, I say this with love, I say it with more love than you know, are driving the bus, but maybe not so well. This question has been asked since the late 90s and probably got 14 different studies. And they ask, this is actually the Bank of America Merrill Lynch high net worth philanthropy study. And so they ask high net worth households, defined as typically, I think it's $2 million or more net worth, excluding the primary residence, or $200,000 of household income. They asked them, they said, who initiated the charitable conversation? That was the actual question. 10% said my advisor brought it up. 10%. This has not moved for 30 years. Has not moved for 30 years. It bounces between 18 and 15%. So then 90% said I had to raise the question. And now I always say, what are the top 3 things that make people the most anxious or uncomfortable? Number 1, public speaking, off the chart. Number 1. Number 2, contemplating your own death. Doing that on the clock for my estate attorney friends on this webinar at 6-minute increments at $350 or $500 an hour. That makes it more fun. Death on the clock. The third thing, by the way, is asking other people for money. So I was doing this with the spousal quiz with my wife. This was like 15 years ago. I went on to another sort of email. She was in another room and she kind of yelled out like 4 minutes after I did the quiz, which she does not like the spousal quizzes. And she said, wait a minute, isn't that your job description? Like it is. I do public speaking around the country saying, hey, when you die, leave all your money to charity. Like what other job can hit all 3 anxiety inducing street cones every single day? But this just has not moved. And in many cases too, and I want to be respectful here, but sometimes I'll talk with a state attorney like, well, that just seems like it's going over the line. It's kind of uncomfortable, kind of gets a little bit, gets a little bit weird. Like, oh, that's interesting. So 99.2% of high net worth families give to charity every year, but sort of raising that is sort of an uncomfortable thing. Like, yeah, sometimes we'll talk about it if they bring it up. Like, okay. I said, but don't you have to bring up the illegitimate child from 3 mistresses ago as part of the estate planning process? And that's not weird and awkward and uncomfortable? That's odd to me. I had a guy in Miami, an estate attorney. This is an actual conversation. He goes, oh, I always ask my clients. It's like, oh, that's great. I kind of collect the questions. Like, what do you say? He literally said this. He said, oh, I asked them all. I said, you don't want to give them money to charity, do you? Like, what? I'm like, I know that's a question technically. I would say no to that. That's, and he thought I started laughing thinking that was a joke. He said, no, that's what I asked him. I'm like, oh my God. So put some sugar on it, I guess is the point, and be able to raise it hopefully confidently. And I've been able to provide the specific academically tested question that gets the best results. Many of my clients like to leave money to charity in their will. Tell me about the charities or causes that you are passionate about. What are your annuals? I'll turn those into perennials. And the last one here, we should have good time, almost exactly 15 minutes for questions. And I hope you'll push back too. Some of this you might push back, be totally fine. Number 10, this was a 2013 study, really interesting. So I plucked out, I think, 3 slides here, a very large study. And this was US Trust, $10 million net worth plus US Trust clients. So they asked the clients these questions, and then they asked the advisors to those clients. I love how they designed this study. The point is it wasn't like to the advisor, tell me about what other clients would do. It's like, no, tell me what you think your clients would do. And they said, okay, so we'll start. Tax benefits as a motivation for giving. High net worth individuals will reduce their giving if income tax deductions were totally eliminated. The clients, roughly 45% of them, said, yes, we probably would reduce our giving if it was totally eliminated. Then they asked the advisors to those clients, what percentage do you think would say that they would reduce their giving? Oh, I know my clients very well. We have deep relationships. I'm inviting to the weddings of their kids. I know them so well. I think 78% of them would reduce their giving. Like that's a pretty big delta. This gets weird. It doesn't get better. This is the best one out of the whole group. And this again is this priority disconnect and the perceptions versus reality. And again, I also understand these are sort of groups and they sort of answer how you think that they would answer. I get all of that, but the delta here is quite large as we go through. How about estate taxes? 6% of the clients said that they would reduce their giving. 40% is what the advisors to those clients predicted. Motivation for giving is reducing tax burden. Now, definitely that brings up the conversation. You're getting ready to have an exit or some kind of capital gain, or you're doing your estate plan. Absolutely, it prompts the question, but that's not why people are giving as sort of a primary motivation. Because you do the math, they shouldn't give it all, right? So almost always. So you have here then 10% of the clients said that the primary or one of the primary motivations for giving is reducing tax burden. Roughly half of the advisors said that that was why, or that would be what their answers would be is yes, it is a primary motivation for giving. So it gets worse from there. That's actually this is my only have two slides here, which is good. So the next one is they say why don't the high net worth individuals give or give as much? And so they asked then those same $10 million plus clients, and they said, oh, there are three reasons. This is super consistent with other studies. Super consistent. There are three reasons. One, my gift will not be used wisely. That's number one. Number two, lack of knowledge connection to the charity. And number three, I'm fearing, understandably, based on my um, point about the high net worth being hit up a lot more, fear of increased donation requests from others. Those are the top three. I want to make a real point here to say this is literally the value of the Seattle Foundation. They make sure it's used wisely. They create the connections to the charities, information, knowledge to make sure it's impactful, and to the extent appropriate, sort of keeping people off the radar relative to additional donation requests. So this is like almost one, two, and three is the value proposition to a great extent for the Seattle Foundation. Not speaking on their behalf, but I just want to sort of point that out. They then asked the professional advisors to these clients, why don't they give or give more? Oh, I know my clients. I know why. Number one, they would not have enough money to leave their heirs. Number one, not even in here. Number two, would not be left with enough money for themselves. Not even in here. Number three, client does not consider himself or herself wealthy enough to give. Not even in here. What I find about this is so interesting to me. The reason why that they don't give or give more, it has nothing to do with money, no money, no money. Here it's money, money, money. I'm a financial advisor. That's how I'm hardwired. That's how many of you are hardwired. I get it. I get it. But this is a pretty big disconnect, I would suggest, with love between why they don't give and what the perceptions of what their own advisors are why they don't give. Those are big deltas. My final point here before we open it for questions, and I hope there are some good questions, um, are one, when I was at the Atlanta Community Foundation back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think it's important to say this. So your foundation has an unbelievable reputation nationally, has for a very, very long time. And an important part of that is the relationship that you have as professional advisors with them. When their clients are planning something or selling something, when your clients are, to the extent that they're looking for some kind of charitable partner, obviously to be able to use them is obviously very, very important. And why I bring this up is you may be shocked to hear that I led development at the Atlanta Community Foundation. We did nothing other than work with our professional advisors. Again, when their clients were planning something or selling something and they're looking for a charitable component where we were a fit, we would then sort of build that into either lifetime, life income, or estate plan. 90 90% of all of our new funds came to us as referrals from professional advisors. We did nothing else. The other 10% of donors came to us as referrals from existing donors who had originally come to us from their professional advisors. So the growth of your Seattle Foundation is completely locked into your work as advisors working with your clients trying to find the best charitable fit. So I just want to make sure that was said here. And they did not pay me to say that, by the way. I'll lead with that. So I will sort of stop sharing. That's it for the presentation here. And I'm happy to go through any questions or anything too. In particular, Cindy, you or the team have in terms of comments about things that you're seeing there in Seattle and trends or the foundation specifically.
Thank you, Brian. I do want to encourage everyone to put questions in the Q&A. We do have a couple of questions that were sent in advance, and I think Natalie's going to kick us off with that.
Yeah, sure. I can totally do that. The first question is around crypto. So, curious if you can talk a little bit about donating cryptocurrency, like what the trends are that you might be seeing. Do you expect any growth in this area? Just kind of what are your thoughts on that?
When did that question come in? So if it was in December of last year, I'd have a very different answer to that question. So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so a couple things. And I want to be a little, I don't want to say careful, but so I would say this, at least in terms of things that we see in terms of our activity, crypto in the last 4 or 5 years has averaged about two, like one more than one, 2% of all of our non-cash activity. We get probably 30%, maybe that's high, but not that much, questions, oh my God, about crypto.
Mm-hmm.
We also track all of the referrals that we get from the donor, from advisor, from charities around crypto. This is not a joke. I know the number. It's 37. So every 37 inquiries that we get, we complete one crypto gift. The tire kicking is unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life, times 57. Also, when you hear about crypto, people are like, oh, crypto. Well, Bitcoin and Ethereum are about 65% of the market, but there are 10,000 tokens. So you could say, oh, can we take crypto? Like, which one of the 10,000 tokens? So the point is, long story short, last year we averaged about 1 million per crypto donation. We took about 115 or so. There are honestly about 5 to 6 charities doing about 90% of the crypto in the entire country. If Harvard has done more than 3 or 4 in 6 or 7 years, I shouldn't speak on their behalf. You can look at their 990 Schedule M. I'd be surprised. I
Yeah.
do about typically 300 or 400 crypto appraisals each year. So I literally see where all of the donations are going. I think in 7 or 8 years, this is not a joke. I think maybe 20 to 25 of my appraisals, that might be up around 1,500 total, 2,000,
Mhm.
went to colleges or universities in that entire time period. So there's a lot of flash and shininess. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can work really well. It's long-term capital gain asset as long as the charity is comfortable taking it. But a lot of charities will do the build it, they will come model, which means they're creating the crypto institutional account, which is a huge pain in the butt. Most donors think, oh, it's just on your phone. That's a retail account. I can set up a Coinbase retail account in about 4 minutes. Institutional account, I don't know if you guys have done this or not. You should let me know. But if you're literally having to send by email all of the personally identifying information from every
Yeah.
single one of your board members, like
Yeah.
socials, like everything.
Mhm.
You're not getting anybody on the phone
Yeah.
ever. And you're sending all that by email. And you're like, do we really want to do that? So the institutional process is a clunky, nasty process. And how many charities have done that? And then after 3 years, they've had in like two. Like, oh my God, why did we ever do that? So most will use intermediaries. We do it, and there are a bunch of other intermediaries in the system that donors can use or other charities can use as basically just a pass through or flow through. If charities are doing like, oh my gosh, we're doing like 3 of these a month, set up your own then. But you can training wheels it with these other ones until you have volume. So long story short, there's a lot of noise. There definitely are transactions, don't get me wrong, but it's really to 5 or 6 charities nationally that are doing most all of them. And within that space, probably at least 80%, that's my guess, are going to be Bitcoin or Ethereum, maybe some of the other ones around the top 10. So I'll shut up
Mm.
there. It's a good
No,
question.
fascinating. Thank
But not
you.
so much this year. This year hadn't been much at all given the market drop.
Right, 100%. 100%. It's interesting to think about what might happen in the months to come. I have another question for you, which is, do you notice any generational differences in how donors think about giving non-cash assets?
Um, I think so. I think it used to be, I mean, I've done this a long time, and it used to be like, oh, I heard about somebody doing one of these at a conference one time. And then like 5 years later, it was like, I heard somebody at a state, plan giving council or a state planning council that sort of talked about this that did one. And then it
Yeah.
was, wait, somebody in my firm did one, like in a different city. And then 5 years later, it was like somebody in my firm did one. And then last 4 or 5 years, like I did one. So there's a normalization of the possibilities of these types of gifts, where I would say generally 20 years ago, it's like, that just seems weird. Like, does a dragon live in a cave? And it was like this very mysterious sort of thing. And now it's like, oh, sure, you can give real estate. Oh, sure. Now, there are lots of complications to this stuff. So we're glossing through a number of these things. But I
Yeah,
think it's much more like, oh, haven't charities always been comfortable doing these types of things? And the answer is like, not really. And
yeah,
mainly because the advisors weren't comfortable thinking further across the balance sheet to go
yeah.
beyond cash, bad, or publicly traded stock, to look at these other things that could be more tax optimal to give. And the more people now are doing them, think about it. I was doing a talk at the Wyoming or Montana, I can't remember, statewide bar association at lunch. That morning, the CEO announced of Patagonia, he was giving his entire business away. It's a private
Mm,
business. The Greater Kansas City Community Foundation received the entire Kansas City Royals baseball team, the entire team. When I'm on a plane and I don't want to talk to the person next to me, I say I'm a life insurance agent. And that works every time. Or I can buy the Bose headsets. I won't because I'm cheap. Dr. Bose went to MIT, taught there, gave 50.1% of Bose Corporation to MIT.
mm,
1.2 to 1.4 billion dollar gift. Tulsa Community Foundation, more than 4 billion in oil and gas interests. So a lot more of these are happening in plain sight, and people are learning about it, going, oh, that's possible. So it's starting to really hockey stick in terms of the volume in that
mm.
space.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. This is the last question I have, which is
Sure.
curious if you can talk a little bit about this idea of donating a QCD to a DAF. Like, there's been conversations about this for a long time. It seems like they kind of pop up and then fade away. And just curious, like, based on your long experience, what do you think is going to happen there, if anything? Do you think that will ever be a
Yeah.
reality?
I don't know. Yeah, I used to enjoy, I guess, sort of tracking tax proposals, and then you do that for a little bit, and you're like, in the last 24 hours, they're going to change it 50 times anyway for however they wanted to do it, and so I've sort of given up that a little bit, so I have no idea. But there are definitely a number of the large national trade groups that are definitely sort of lobbying for that piece. There seems I've heard like 2 weeks ago that there seems to be some traction in that, which is very interesting, kind of surprising to me, actually. But I really want to make maybe a deeper point, if I may, and that is that so many people connote that community foundations are donor advised funds. You're not a donor advised fund. You're a donor advised fund sponsor, which is code for all of the other funds are QCD acceptable, as you know. So I hear all the time advisors going, oh my God, they'd love to give the community foundation, but it's a QCD. It's like, that doesn't mean a donor advised fund at the community foundation. They can do a designated fund, a scholarship fund. They can do all these different funds. They've got a nonprofit that they love, and if the nonprofit has an agency endowment fund there, they can give to that agency endowment fund. So I think that there's a real confusion around, can QCDs go to community foundations all day long, just not to the a donor advised fund, as you guys well know. So yeah.
Well,
Excellent.
I think
Thank you
we're
so much.
we're out of time, so I'm going to quickly do a few final notes. I want to thank Brian so much. I hope everyone learned as much as we did. Before we close, I just want to remind everyone that when we close the webinar, a survey will pop up. That's where you will complete it to get your CE credit. And then in the next few days, we'll send a follow-up email with the recording slides and a link to Brian's book, because he quite literally wrote the book on charitable giving with non-cash assets. One final note, we hope you'll join us for an in-person happy hour July 23rd at Seattle Foundation's offices. Our summer social, which is hosted by our Professional Advisors Council, is a great chance to reconnect with colleagues. Natalie will drop the RSVP in the chat, and it'll be in the follow-up email. We hope you'll think of us as partners and resources in your charitable planning work with clients, and we would love to work with you to advance your clients' philanthropic goals. So thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.